What's up? Welcome to the show. You just hit play on the first official episode of my new podcast, Mork Unfiltered. I'm super stoked that you're here. Today, I'm going to be chatting with Gopi Rangan, a really good friend of mine and the founder and general partner of Shore Ventures, a leading VC firm focused on insurtech in Silicon Valley. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff, including a major topic, which is starting your own company, the dynamics of the venture business. And we're also going to share a dirty little secret no VC would ever willingly admit to. Now, whether you're running your own VC firm or you're the owner of a different kind of business, there are valuable takeaways to take away in this show and this conversation for you. Listen in as we'll discuss purpose-driven investing, leading a mission-driven business, career shifts, and kindness. No joke. We spend a lot of time exploring and discussing the importance of kindness in business and how to keep kindness at the forefront of everything that we do and why this matters today more than ever. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Gopi Rangan. I'll be back at the end of the show to wrap things up. Gopi, welcome, my friend. Always awesome to see you, and it is such an honor to have you here today.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's an honor to be one of your first guests, and I'm looking forward to an unfiltered conversation.
All right, let's go. I hope I don't make you regret those words, man. Well, let's start a little bit kind of, with your early career, right? So you started in engineering, right? You made your way through corporate venture capital. You spent some time at Intel, if I'm not mistaken. And now you're into this mission-led, purpose-led investing. And I was just wondering kind of when you thought about investing and you thought about, starting your own fund, what really pulled you in that direction? What did you also feel that you were walking away from when you made that huge decision?
It was hard to walk away from some of the attractive opportunities. But let me start with what is venture capital? Venture capital is an advisory business, helping founders unleash potential, build a successful business for the long term. It happens to have capital attached. That makes it glamorous, but there's a lot behind the scenes. What I really wanted to do was have the autonomy. So when I go in front of a founder and promise that, look, I'm with you through the journey of this building the business. This journey of entrepreneurship goes through ups and downs. And I want to be a part of that and help the founders throughout the journey. The best way for me to be able to do that and serve these founders and really cherish that experience was by creating my own firm. And I came to the conclusion after trying a few other things, and also, let me be honest about it, it's very hard to get a job at a VC firm, especially at senior levels. And there are very, very few opportunities available, so it becomes super, super competitive. It's not like all the large VC firms were willing to hire me right away. So I did have a few options. And I'll give you an example. When I was interviewing with one of the large VC firms, this is what the partner told me. Partner told me that, Gopi, you are too poor to be a partner at this firm. Okay.
But sound like, gee, thanks.
Yeah. I wasn't prepared for that comment. Right. During interviews, you talk about skills and experience and personality, relationships and network and accomplishments, track record and all of that. But I never realized that my personal net worth would come into the conversation. So I got pissed off, of course. And then I started reflecting more. So there were two things that came to mind. The first is there is a big change happening in the venture capital industry. In the traditional old world of venture capital, limited partners, institutional limited partners are used to backing GPs who are already successful in their career. They hit the peak earlier in their career, and now they are not constrained by the financial requirements. They take care of their family, and they're not optimizing to make money out of management fees, and they're aligned in the long-term incentive of profit sharing. That's kind of the philosophy. That's the theory behind it. So there is some merit to what this partner told me. But the second thing that really hit home for me is because of all the changes that are happening, it is important for founders to stay close to VCs who relate to them. And those VCs, like me, are not necessarily super wealthy. And I have so much hunger. And if I can think of some of the VCs who've already had peaks in their career earlier, will they have another peak in their career? It's really hard, right? On the other hand, I'm here hungry. I want to accomplish something, and I want to build something, and I want to make a mark, and I'm going to give it all. Will the GP at a firm who's already had a peak and is super wealthy, will that VC have the appetite to do it? And I clearly saw that there was clearly a misalignment in what the firm was looking for and what I was looking for. But also, I doubled down on my conviction that what I was going to do is the right thing to do, start my own firm.
Was that for you the key moment where you decided, okay, I have to do my own thing? Or was there another moment that like catalyzed for you that like working with others or being in a traditional firm was really not the option? Was that the moment, or was there another moment?
There was another moment that was probably pivotal in putting everything together in my mind for me. But when I was looking for opportunities, I had to walk away from some really lucrative jobs. I ended up getting a couple of job offers, like partner number 5 or 6. Or I could have gone back to corporate venture capital, and I could have been head of corporate VC at one of the prestigious brands. Instead, I walked away. And what made me develop the conviction to start my own firm is a comment by a founder. So during that time before I started my firm, I took a break, and I used to joke that, look, I love venture capital so much. I like working with founders so much that I could actually do this for free. This was when I had the VC job, right? So I put that to test. Now, I did it for free, and I helped a handful of founders for almost a year, and I really, really enjoyed it. And the founders also saw a lot of value in what I was bringing to them. Now, I would help them with their business strategy, go to market, fundraising, and sometimes just being a friend in the journey. So during one of those conversations, a founder said, Gopi, why don't you start your own firm? We would rather take money from you instead of trying to go to other VC firms and convince them that, no, this is a good business. Obviously, they are struggling to understand what we are building, and you get it. And we like working with you. So if you had a fund, we would rather take money from you than going to other VCs. So I've heard a lot of flattering comments from founders over the years, but my imposter syndrome kind of kicked in most of the time. And I would dismiss it. I wouldn't take it seriously. And I would sometimes even question, they're flattering me because they want to get something in return, or they're flattering me because I have a popular big brand on my business card. And I never really took it to heart. And when this comment from this founder came to me, I really got bold. I could see that founders really want me for me. They want to spend time with me, and they see value in what I do for them. And that kind of came together, and that's what helped me form the conviction that I want to take a bet on myself. I also remember having a conversation with you around the same time, and you said that, look, you have an amazing track record already. What are you waiting for? And that kind of pushed me over the edge. And there are quite a few conversations like that, supporting people that helped me get to that point where I decided that I'll start my own firm.
Yeah, you probably left out all the bad things that I said about existing VCs, which is why I wanted some good people to get into the industry. But
we'll get to those topics soon.
One of the interesting things that you said there that I want to drill down on, because I'm sure that, people that are listening and watching today's episode, many of them either have been in this situation or may find themselves in this situation soon, right? Because the reality is, if you look at it, there were some statistics that was published, I think by the World Economic Forum at Davos this year. And they estimate that some 90 million jobs are going to go away in the next 4 years due to artificial intelligence, right? That's just a reality. There's a lot of jobs that are going to disappear. I mean, people talk about 170 million jobs are going to get created. Well, that's nice, but the jobs that are going to go are going to go. We're pretty sure of that. How many are going to get created, we don't know yet, right? We know that there's going to be job creation. But for all the people that are out there, many of who either have had to make big decisions on a career change, or some of these people, who may be watching right now, are maybe contemplating a massive career change. And let's face it, man, I mean, anytime that you make a big career change, it's scary. You mentioned imposter syndrome. Was that the main thing that you think was holding you back, or was there some other fear that kind of like was really holding you back from starting your own fund? And if so, what was it, and how did you get over it? Because so many people struggle. They like all of a sudden they have this light moment where they're like, holy shit, I should do this. Like everybody's telling me I'm so good at this. Why don't I do that? And then something stops them, and so many people are unable to make that transition. So what was your fear, and how did you get over it?
I had a lot of fears when I started a firm. Like no one in my family had ever started a business. Although I had spent a lot of time with founders, I never really started a business on my own. So it was not an easy thing to do. And I think that launching a VC firm is probably the hardest thing to do, one of the hardest things to do in the business world.
Yeah.
Good VCs are good on the buy side. They're not really good on the sell side.
Right.
They're selling something that doesn't exist. I'm selling a portfolio of companies that even I don't know what's going to be in it. And to people who have no urgency to buy. Right? And the LPs, no one, it's not like enterprise sales where you ask the question, what's your budget? And do you have the urgency to buy something in the next 6 months? Like, no, most LPs don't have that. So it's a really hard thing to do. And if I wonder what I would have done if I had known that it would be so hard. Well, one of the things that I started with at the time was focus on insurtech.
Right.
And it's still a big portion of what I do today. Like more than 70% of my investments are focused on insurtech.
Right.
And at the time when I started, I really believed, after doing a lot of research and analysis on the market, this was going to be very important and huge in the future. But there were a lot of questions. And I had hit on a few rising tide waves like this in the past, and prior to that in my career. Like I got the IoT wave, and one of my investments, company called Adesto, went IPO. It was one of the first IoT companies that went IPO. The ticker symbol was IoT. I got the crypto wave, and my previous firm was an investor in Coinbase. And I got a lot of bets in the data center enterprise infrastructure wave. So I had hit a few of these rising tides, and I felt like the insurtech rising tide was going to be big, but it was unproven. And I was if not the first, one of the first seed stage focused insurtech VC firms. And I was a bit scared. I was making bold statements, but to prove that is going to take many, many years. But luckily for me, it has been proven so strongly that insurtech has become such a strong trend, and it has arrived much faster than even I ever expected. So that was a scary moment when I started, but I'm very happy with the decision. I'll give you another example.
It was the conviction of the niche that you chose, right? This focus on insurtech. That was one of the things that helped you overcome your imposter syndrome?
I was unique, and I had a weird thesis that no one else had.
Right.
And in that space, I was the most dominant person. Even today, if you go out on the street and say, hey, I'm starting an insurtech startup, who should I speak to? Within 3 conversations, you're going to get connected to me.
That's great.
And that made it super attractive for me to be able to meet amazing entrepreneurs in this space very easily. So every VC or every business has to have a niche they start with, and then eventually they grow, get broader and broader. So it is, for me, this was the niche where I started with. It was pretty scary at the time to pick a niche like this. But I'm glad that I picked the niche that is so huge. It's a multi-trillion-dollar market with very little innovation. So there's lots of opportunities just in this space.
A lot of consumers who feel like they're constantly getting screwed by insurance companies, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think there's, USAA probably is a notable exception, but the net promoter scores of a lot of these insurance companies is probably not very high, and the love for their brands is probably even lower, right? So it's a good space to be in.
That's exactly why I chose this sector. I knew that for the next 20 years, there'll be plenty of innovation coming up. The other question that comes up very often with VCs is, when I make investments now, how scared am I? Or how, even if I have high conviction, when I write the check and wire the money, my hands are sweaty. It's never 100% slam dunk with any of these companies, and it takes years to materialize. even today, although I've done 50 plus investments over the past 15 years, and every time I decide to make an investment, wire the money, my hands are sweaty and I feel butterflies in my stomach. What helped me overcome that is a comment I remember. One of my mentors, he was the VP of Investor relationship at a company I worked at, Scott Wiley. He was a military veteran, and he said, "Trust your butterflies. Your butterflies are good. It's good that you feel that. You should actually be worried if you're so overconfident that you don't even feel the butterflies." And he says he's one of the best communicators, stage speakers I've ever met. And he says that even now, when he goes up on stage, he feels the butterflies. And he knows that when the butterflies happen, he's good.
That's also when you have learning, right? Is when I always tell, founders that I coach, it's like, when you have those butterflies, you get a little bit nervous. Sometimes it's a sign that you're pushing the boundaries. You're trying to do something new. You're trying to do something bold and different and hard. And that's exactly when you get the growth. But, one of the things that I'm interested in as well, which I love about, your fund, and I love about you, is that, when you land on Shore Ventures, one of the first things that you see, which, personally is a huge kudos for me, is, your mission statement, right? That it's all about enabling peace of mind for all. Tell me a little bit about that. Where did that come from? And why do you think as a VC, because most VCs don't seem to give a shit about this kind of stuff, right? Like mission and vision and stuff. A lot of VCs don't seem to care that much. They seem to be so much more focused on the entrepreneur's business and the financials and the model and the technology. So obviously they care about the entrepreneur, but they care even less so about being very, mission driven themselves as a venture capital. And there's obviously some notable exceptions, but what was it? Why enable peace of mind for all as the mission for Shore Ventures? And why is that important to you?
Yeah, we'll talk more about how poorly venture capital industry is understood. It's very often misunderstood. We'll go into some of those details, but let me answer this question on peace of mind, why I chose that. Let's take a step back on who we are. Right? We work really hard to build assets, buy a car, home, various other things that are tangible, and also intangible things like you want your reputation, health, mental health, peace, all of those things. That's one part of it. And the second half of that, our work, is to protect that.
Right.
We spend a lot of time thinking about the first one, which is how to accumulate wealth, how to build wealth. We spend very little time thinking about protecting it. Now, I grew up in India in a middle-class family, and this applies to every aspect of the society, but I can immediately see what happens when there's a bad event, a theft or a natural disaster or some unlucky thing that happens that will put you down. Like it will bring you back by a few steps in life. And that makes a huge impact. It's hard to recover, sometimes irrecoverable. And you see the impact of this, especially in countries and societies with poverty, where one natural disaster wipes out years of savings that the family put together. We want to prevent that. What we want, when do we have peace of mind? We have peace of mind when we are going out to take risk and we know that our liabilities are protected.
Right.
We are able to get back on our feet even something bad happens. That is what I wanted to focus on. And having that safety net, in this case, it's a financial safety net. It could also be relationships with people and other things that act as safety nets. You want to form those pillars that bring you back, and you can lean on them for support. The best industry that helps us measure, manage, mitigate risk is the insurance industry. And that's why I focus on that sector. My ultimate goal is to be able to help us achieve that peace of mind so we go to sleep well and wake up in the morning, take risks, build prosperity for our families. Right. And there are many ways of doing this, and one way is to create opportunities for people to access financial products like insurance. And this whole insurance industry is like $6 trillion of gross written premium collected by all the global companies. And in addition, they manage another $6 trillion of assets. This is like 15% of the global GDP. It's a backbone of our society. It touches people's lives on a daily basis, like at good times and at bad times. Yet, this industry is stuck in Stone Age. Not my words, but the CEO of Aviva once said it in a quarterly investor meeting that the industry is stuck in Stone Age. Very little R&D spend, or negligible, almost zero. This industry is screaming for innovation. Who's going to bring those new ideas? Startup founders. Yeah. That's why I got really excited about this. And I'm so happy that I could marry both the financial side of investing in good companies, innovative ideas, and also the social aspect of achieving something good for the society, which is enabling peace of mind. So that's why I decided to focus on this sector.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and it's funny because, that's, as you know, kind of like this whole idea of like being mission driven and purpose, that's foundational for me as well in what I do. And it's, the first chapter of my book. And I have so many conversations with founders that I work with where I'm just shocked at how few founders actually have clarity around why they're building what they're building. Right. And it's kind of like when you have that clarity, it's very inspiring, right? The founders that I've met that are really excited about what they're doing, generally, they're like, they have this big, bold vision. They have this big story. They have this deep-seated need to do this. And what I found is not only is it, easier for them to sell their vision to fellow entrepreneurs or to employees or to investors, but also, the big theme that I've seen, especially the last 2 or 3 years, is that, when you're very purpose-driven the way you are, it also builds a tremendous amount of resilience when times get tough, right? And we all go through some tough times. I mean, I know some of your stories, and I know how tough it's been for you, right? On the professional side, on the personal side, people don't realize how hard it is to actually raise a fund, especially your first fund. Like, I watched you do it, and I was like, oh my God, this is so much harder than I thought. Because you're selling yourself, right? You're right. You don't have any technology. You don't have a product. You oftentimes don't have a team because you're a solo kind of GP, and you don't have a portfolio yet. You're selling a thesis. You're selling an investment thesis. So being mission driven, I can understand why you did it. It makes so much more sense now when you explain it to me. And I just wish that more startup founders took a step back and really thought more deeply about why they're building what they're doing, as opposed to, oh, I just want to have another unicorn and I just want to build this tech because it's cool, which is a recipe for disaster if you ask me. So on that note, let's talk about rewiring a little bit venture capital. One of the things that really annoys me about venture capital, and I'm sure a bunch of people listening to this episode today can relate to this, is that there's an enormous amount of mental shortcuts and pattern matching, right? And I was talking to a partner at a very well-known VC firm who I will not mention, and I served an opportunity with him. And the founder of this company is a serial entrepreneur who's already built a unicorn. He's already been successful, built a serious company here in the state of Florida, I think 4,000 employees. And I was like, look, you got to talk to this guy. He's amazing. What he's doing is really interesting. He's, applying AI to talent sourcing. And the like one-line answer via email from this partner was, oh yeah, had a bad experience with HR tech a few years ago. I don't really want to touch that again. And I was like, bro, seriously? You're going to not look at this opportunity? You're not even going to look at this founder who's an accomplished founder who's done this already just because you had one bad experience. So, I guess the question I want to get at is, when you got into venture capital, what did you feel that you had to unlearn as a result of getting into this industry and having your own fund? Was there something that you feel you had to unlearn to become a good investor?
Patrick, the skill of unlearning is probably one of the most important skills for a VC. Every VC has an anti-portfolio. Yeah. Companies they missed, they should have invested. And even more important is, if they had the opportunity to invest and they didn't take the shot, it is a huge mistake.
Yep.
In venture capital, commission mistakes are forgivable. You make an investment, you lose money, understandable. If you did the right thing with the right conviction and things didn't work out, it's okay. It's pardonable.
Yeah.
Omission mistakes are crazy expensive. It's not common to find a company that turns into a unicorn. Less than 4% of the companies get to that stage. For less than 4% of the companies, the investment transactions get to the level of returns that are suitable for venture capital. And most firms have, like good firms have like 2% of their companies achieve that. The probability is so low. So given that, what I ask myself all the time is, I say so many no's, and when I say a no, why am I saying a no? Is it like, it's like 99 no's to 1 yes off. Right? That's kind of the rough ratio. When I say no, am I saying it because I have a bias? Or I have some past experience in, like you said, in HR tech with that partner? Do I have PTSD because of some bad experience? Or it could be personality of founders. We want founders to have a chip on the shoulder, but not be too arrogant about it. And there are some personality styles that work well. And I see a personality style and I could get very concerned about it. Or I could get very concerned about a segment in an industry, or a certain type of business model, or some kind of products that are built. And I question myself, like every time I say no, why am I saying no? Am I saying no because I genuinely have concerns? Or am I saying no because I'm biased? As a VC, I must spend a lot of time. It's very natural for me to get curious about things and I learn a lot. But I also need to pause and unlearn some of the things and the pattern matching that has come up intuitively. I have to be able to get out of that and have an open mind. And when I go in front of a founder, I need to be able to listen authentically and see what the scenarios might look like. So it's a fine balance. And I make mistakes also all the time. Like my classmate at INSEAD was the founder of BlaBlaCar, like the Uber of Europe. And I watched him struggle for so many years. And the first few years, no one even respected him. Even in my class, he was like not as popular and most people didn't even know him. And then now he's the most successful classmate from coming out of my class. He's on the front page of the newspaper. He goes on private jets with the prime minister and he's donated a lot to the school. But early on, I could see the struggle. And when I had an opportunity to invest in Uber with my previous firm, I told my partners, like, look, I know this story. Uber's already way more successful and I don't know how much further it would go. And I was wrong. Yeah. I have lots of stories like this where I missed opportunities, but unlearning is something that every VC needs to do. And it gets harder and harder.
Yeah, it's hard to unlearn our biases. Like, we have I can understand why he made that comment. Right. But it's one of the hardest things to do. And now in this new age of, artificial intelligence and all the new technology that's coming on board, it's going to require us to unlearn things now more than ever. Right. There's a lot of things we take for granted that, we think, you have to unlearn the size of the engineering teams that it used to take to build a product. You have to unlearn how to take a product to market. You have to unlearn the size of the marketing team that you need. You have to unlearn the kind of creative materials that you need. You have to unlearn a whole bunch of stuff. And so I think it's kind of like, I was on our INSEAD WhatsApp group the other day, and I was posting about a feedback masterclass that I'm going to be doing soon. And one of the guys said something that really shook me. He said, well, yeah, you're talking about coaching and leadership, but aren't you targeting like young leaders between ages of 30 to 40? And I was like, well, what's that supposed to mean? Does that mean that once you get over 40 that you're no longer learning, that you're no longer growing? Is that what that means? Or does that mean that you guys are so fucking smart that you think you have nothing left to learn? Right. And it's actually somebody else in the group called him out and said, dude, this is all about growth mindset, right? Read the book by Carol Dweck on growth mindset. It's like all of us should be constantly learning no matter how successful we get. And it's the minute that we get too successful that, destiny, the world, the universe, faith, whatever you want to call it, kind of like knocks us on our ass and then reminds us that we're human and that we're fallible and we make mistakes. But I want to touch on another subject for a second, which I think is interesting about your approach, because when I talk to people, and when I read the testimonies of people who have received investment from you, one of the things that I noticed was, that you seem to be more focused on like this idea of trust, alignment of mission and the company culture that the founder is trying to build. That's so rare. Like most VCs I come across, especially the more unsophisticated VCs, the newer VCs, especially outside the US, they're always talking about the financials, the business model, the product, the technology. I hear so few people talk about some of those topics that you mentioned. I hear so few people talk about company culture and leadership. Why do so many investors just gloss over that? Why do they miss the mark on that?
The VC industry is not well understood, even by founders. What the founders need today is how to find the right advisor for a specific problem and what question to ask to get the right answer that will be useful for them. And that's a skill that founders need to learn. And VCs can help, especially early stage VCs. And that's the work I do with most of my founders. I don't claim to have all the answers. In fact, I'm largely useless, and so are most VCs. And some over-enthusiastic VCs get really excited that they can actually go in and help, and they don't. Let the founder do their magic, and that's why we invested in these founders. So 80% of the time, I need to get my nose out of the business and let them do their thing, but I need to be involved to be aware of what they're doing. Then I can be useful to them. The 20% of the time I can be useful to them, even then, I point them to the right people or the right place, or read this right report or listen to this thing, and that gives you the insight that you're looking for. So who I recommend or what resource I send to the founder and what I ask them to do with that resource matters. And very, very, very few times where I have the magic and I can sit with the founder and solve a problem for them. And that can happen, but that's not all the time. So I'm not the one that is helping the founders build the business. They are building the business, and they have the full conviction on what is the right thing to do. I'm here to support them in that journey. How did we end up here? It's 2025 is a very interesting time in venture capital. Until 2005, there were about 100 VC firms that really mattered. And those VCs largely worked as a project manager with some business acumen. And the founders were largely super brilliant engineers, didn't know much about business. Those were the companies that were built in the 1990s until like the early 2000s, until dot-com bust happened. Now, there are always some exceptions, but largely this is the way we can understand what happened then. So from 2005 to about 2015, things changed. There was more respect given to founders, and there were founders with good managerial skills and leadership skills. Founders were not thrown out of businesses like they were in the earlier days, and VCs respected them. But they also started offering a buffet of solutions. They built platform businesses. They offered all kinds of services to founders, which was very useful because it was hard to just rely on that one VC to get all the answers. Now you have a whole ecosystem you can tap into anytime you go into a large platform VC firm. But now, since 2015, you can get access to a lot of communities, a lot of online teachings, and management training, leadership development. A lot of those things can be easily accessible to founders, and they don't need these platforms. And platform actually becomes a distraction because you unleash yourself into a buffet. It's entertaining and it's fun to consume all of that. It's actually not useful. What you really want is a curated, specific, tailored solution that works for you now. And that's where my ability to connect with the founder, I can't do that with every founder, but I would only invest in a company when I have I have the conviction that I can do that for the founder if they let me. And when I get that opportunity, it's an honor. It's a treat for me to be able to tell the founder, think about this. And that, I think, is where there's a big gap in understanding for the world and what the VC does and what the founder expects out of the VC. Most founders don't see that way, and they go in front of a VC and hope that they help. They shouldn't help. Like the founder should ask the right question to the right people. That's a skill that some founders have developed really well. The founders that I've worked with, I admire how they do that. They use me so effectively. They don't come to me for everything. They come to me for specific things that they know I can help them with.
Right, right. And that's one of the things that I've noticed about your investment style, right? It's almost like the founders that you work with and have invested in, and even the ones that you haven't invested in, right? Because you're a person that you give a lot of yourself all the time, which I think is admirable. But they see you more as a coach than just an investor, right? So kind of like when you're the coach and the investor, how do you challenge founders if you find that they are starting to drift with regards to values? Because like oftentimes one of the things that I see is that as founders become more successful, as their company grows, as they raise subsequent, rounds of funding, the value of the company grows, they're getting more media attention, they're getting more attention in general. It's very easy to get sucked into this belief that I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, I'm the second coming of Christ, and your attachment to your purpose of why you started this business in the first place, or the values of what the company is supposedly built on, they start to go by the wayside because people are telling you all the time that the only thing you need to be focused on is company valuation. How do you challenge founders when you see that happening?
My job as a VC is to help unleash potential in ambitious founders who are chasing bold ideas to solve problems in the world. The way I model my behavior and the way I try to coach these founders is how my uncle used to help people. He was a physics professor. He was the dean of the physics department at the Presidency College in Chennai. He was one of the best teachers, very, very patient teacher. He helped a lot of people in the community, in the society. Saturdays and Sundays, I remember like Sunday mornings, he would sit with the newspaper in a reclining chair. It's kind of a slow day for him, like it's a quiet day for him. And invariably, someone from the community would come in, like they would bring their kid or someone and like, hey, can you help this person? And he would listen to the story, and most of the time he'd be like, no, give them some suggestions and let them go, give them some pointers. But once in every 10 conversations, he would sit up on his chair and he would take interest, and he would get furious with some of the decisions that the kid has made because the world has been unfair to them and they knocked at the wrong door or the timing didn't work. They made some basic mistakes, and he would say, well, I'm going to write a letter, take it to this person and tell them, and I'm going to call the person that you're coming, and he will set up the conversation, and that would unleash potential. He derived a lot of pleasure in spotting talent and unleashing potential. He never told them what to do. He knew that there was skill and ability, capability in the person, and especially someone who has amazing skills, amazing potentials. He was able to find that. He was able to spot that much better than anybody else. And he was able to give them the right resources and the right solutions, and that unleashed potential in them. If I did 1,000th of what he has done to people in the world, I would call myself successful. And the way I approach this coaching founders topic is just like how startups unleash potential and they scale very quickly and they achieve like really high valuation and have huge impact in the world. The founders themselves also go through a similar journey, and they are learning, they are leveling up, and they hit a J curve. I'm at the bottom of that J curve with them, showing them that they are capable of way more than what they thought they would be able to. And that brainstorming process, opening their eyes to new things, creating new scenarios so they could see where they could go, that is what I do with them. And like you said, some founders, they forget their definition of success. They chase after some things and they get distracted. And I try to remind them, I don't give judgment on their values. It's their values. They decide what their values are. But if they tell me this is what they wanted to do, I hold them accountable to it. And I remind them, this is what you wanted to do and you're doing something else. Is that what you really want to do now? Have things changed? And Now, most of the founders get it and they realize that, no, let's not go down the path and let's go back on track to where we were going to go.
So you're kind of like an accountability partner and conscience, if you will.
I am somewhere between a best friend and a strategy consultant.
That's a good combination because I think it's, one of the things that never ceases to surprise me is on the one hand, you now have a fairly big body of evidence that shows how powerful coaching can be for founders when they do it and they invest enough time and resources doing it, right? I think there's books like, The $1 Billion Coach, which was written obviously by Eric Schmidt and Jonathan Rosenberg of Google, who talk about, getting professional coaching. Eric Schmidt had a coach even though he had run Oracle, right? And which is a different kind of coaching from the coaching that you provide, right? You're not, to my knowledge, a certified coach, but you have many of the abilities and the questioning and the demeanor to ask the right questions to get founders to come to the correct conclusions. What I found as a professional coach is oftentimes founders don't necessarily feel like they need to be fixed, right? It's not, they don't necessarily go to coaching for fixing, although sometimes that's the case, right? Sometimes an investor will say, hey, look, your communication is freaking awful. You need some coaching, right? Or you need some coaching to help you improve your productivity or whatever. But oftentimes, I think it's more a question of, how do we help founders understand that, whether they're being coached informally by an investor or whether they're being coached by a professional coach, that, coaching is how you get better, right? When you look at some of the most seasoned, experienced people in the world, like, Huber Joly, who teaches at Harvard, who turned around Best Buy, he got coached. And he was like 58 when he was tapped to run Best Buy and save it from the jaws of Amazon. And he got coached, right? And Alan Mulally, who turned on Ford, he was, I think, 63 when he was tapped to do that. And so for me, like, the amazing thing is the number of founders who still push back on that and say either I don't have time for it, or it's not a good use of money, or I'm too busy. I hear that like so often. And it's just, it never ceases to kind of like surprise or sadden me because I see the benefits of it when it really works. And I think few VCs have like the patience or the demeanor to coach people the way you do.
It's a fine line between giving them advice, telling them what to do, and being a coach, holding them accountable for what they actually agreed to do. And being kind in that journey of showing them a mirror to this is what's happening exactly, and this is where you want to go. And more importantly, like showing them where they could go if things worked well, and even bigger than they ever thought of, because the market has changed and the team is working much better. They're able to delegate more, so they can create more bandwidth for themselves to think about bigger pictures. That's one thing that VCs could do well, and only VCs can do for founders, especially early stage VCs.
In my role as a coach, obviously, speaking of kind of like the journey of the founder, one of the things that I've seen, which is very interesting, and I'm in the middle of reading a fantastic book called Reboot by Jerry Colonna, who obviously is a very experienced investor. He was the founder of Flatiron Ventures, in New York way back when, and is also a very successful entrepreneur. One of the things that I found is that oftentimes one of the things that fuels, on the one hand, the founder, but can also hold them back, is childhood experiences, right? Particularly some form of trauma, right? Like, I don't know, you had a family where there was a lot of conflict, or you grew up poor, right? Some founders have like this insane appetite for success, to get financial independence because they grew up in an environment of scarcity. So that's what drives them. And I was just wondering, kind of like, looking at your experience, coming from India, coming from a middle-class family, being an engineer, how have your kind of like personal fears or drives or values shaped you into the person that you are today? When you look back, what are the things that kind of like shaped you, and how did they shape you into the investor, the father, the friend, the coach that you are today?
Now, I remember when I was a kid, maybe around the 4th grade or 5th grade, I the school wanted to hold me back because I wasn't doing well. I was very bad in reading and writing. My mom fought really hard and switched schools, and none of the schools would take me at the same level. And finally, she found a school where I didn't miss a year. And I didn't understand what was going on at the time. But now when I reflect on it, I realized I was good at some things and I was not good at something else. Like, for example, math, I was very good at it. I loved it. I enjoyed it. But I was not really good with languages. Like, I made lots of spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, and memorizing was not my thing at all. Remembering specific facts and details was not my thing at all. I remember one of my language teachers wrote in the margins of my book that, please ask your parents to buy me a Reading pen because I'm using so much of Reading in your answers. Like, why can't you work a little harder to like you are obviously smart, but like you're not doing the hard work. But it wasn't hard work. It was just that I probably had symptoms of dyslexia, and I can see the impact of that even now. So I've developed some coping mechanisms to that. But what gave me confidence was, look, my dad was a researcher, professor at the Ramanujan Institute for Advanced Study in Math. Srinivasa Ramanujan died at the age of like 31, 33 something. He was a genius mathematician. And he also failed. He also failed in some languages and other courses. He wasn't interested in them. All right, we don't know what happened, but he was a brilliant mathematician. So it's okay for someone to be extremely good at one thing and be not so good at other thing, and it's not a flaw. And that's what gave me the comfort that, look, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just different, and I've been able to develop a lot of strength on the good things that come to me naturally. And I've also learned a few different things, like communication was not my forte. And I was a shy engineer, quite introverted. And among the engineers, they think of me as extroverted. But I know, like, especially at INSEAD, like, it was very clear I was far more introverted than some of the other salesy, businessy folks. Coaching helped. Steve Haslett was a professor at INSEAD who I started teaching entrepreneurship courses. And he made a tremendous impact on how I was able to communicate. And I think it was probably the moment when I got over the limitation I always felt for decades that I wasn't good. And now I was able to communicate. I got in front of a class and I started talking, and I not only got good at it, I actually started enjoying it. Mm-hmm. And I've had 1,000 students go through my classes over the past 10 years. This will be my 10th year of teaching. And I cherish those relationships. And some of the students come back with feedback that this course changed my life. This course has had a huge impact on my career. And this is the best week of my time at the business school.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have happened if I didn't get the right coaching, and my confidence was restored by trying something new.
It's interesting how, like, your confidence was restored. You became very good at certain things that you weren't very good at. And yet the things that, may have affected you in your early childhood, like, struggling with reading, struggling with language, in your early career seemed to have impacted you in terms of your ability to communicate, and you were able to get over that, right? But the interesting thing there is that, founder dynamics, sometimes the source of the problem in the dynamic, especially between co-founders, comes sometimes from early childhood, very often the case, right? I saw a case in founders that I worked with where, they never wanted to have arguments. They were this founding couple where they were like, oh yeah, we never have arguments in our firm. And for me, when somebody tells me that, oh my God, that's like a massive red flag. I'm like, okay, that's a problem right there, right? Because if you don't have arguments, then you're burying stuff. You're avoiding the problem. Like, one of the biggest saboteurs I see sometimes in founders is the avoider, right? It's like, oh yeah, we don't have any conflict in our startup. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a bunch of bullshit. Because, at the end of the day, if they had a lot of conflict at home, they don't want to have conflict in their company. And so that therefore shapes how they behave at their company and their ability to engage in or have constructive conflict. So it's super interesting. But But going back to this idea of founders, one of the things that I admire so much about founders, and obviously you've been a founder of your own fund. I founded a couple of companies with, as you know, very mixed success and a lot of learning, and then worked with a lot of founders and been employed by a lot of founders, right? And one of the things I always found was so hard when I was running my company in Chile, and it's still hard, running even my coaching practice, a leadership firm, is the loneliness involved. And so few founders talk openly about this. Like more and more people are starting to talk about, how the loneliness impacts them, and, the issues with self-confidence, not having people to talk to, not having, enough support mechanism when times get very hard. How have you seen founders, or how have you yourself, as a sole GP when you started, how do you break that paradigm? What tools, what saving mechanisms can founders use to get out of that loneliness and not be so impacted by it?
Good founders are a magnet of talent, and they're also good at grooming managers and peers around them to get better and better at what they do. And they give them the opportunity to do their life's work.
Right.
Founders are not necessarily the best at many things they do. They, at the beginning when they start, maybe they are in charge of product. And over time, they would get a VP of product or chief product officer to take over product. So the founder is one of the first people to acknowledge that they're not the best people to lead in that space. And sometimes they may get into a new area, like, no, I don't know marketing very well, and I want to learn. And marketing is very, very important for this business. And I'd rather do it myself, even though it may not be the best way to do it. And founders are willing to learn, and they get to the level one of it and start learning from there. So there's a lot of humility, a lot of authenticity that founders bring. It's a very, very unique, weird role founders play compared to, if you go to a large company employee, that's not how they behave. It's a very drastically different way. It's like hiding your weaknesses and showing up in a way, like I usually say that you send your character to work and they perform a bunch of things, and it's not authentic at all. And founders are the exact opposite of that. They are so authentic every day, especially the good ones. They surround themselves with good people.
Yeah.
And that's what I've also done. It's not that you surround yourself with like 15 people. You pick 3 or 4 people that you can lean on at any given time. Someone you can lean on when you have difficult problems. Doesn't need to have strong business act. You don't have to talk about business all the time. Maybe it's just a Friday evening when things didn't really go well that week, and you want a shoulder to lean on, and I offer that shoulder, and I have no agenda. And a lot of interesting things come out of those conversations, including some things like, out of my childhood experience, and I'm avoiding conflict. And I've realized that we've kind of swept a lot of things under the carpet, and I need to address it head on. Otherwise, this is getting more toxic. So stuff like that comes out. The founder is also learning how to make other people better.
Right.
And that is the skill that, when I see successful founders, they do that so well that retains those exceptionally good, talented people in the company, early employees. They also lighten their load.
Right.
Because they have more bandwidth to focus on other things. The founders doesn't need to be involved in every aspect of the business. Over time, it gets better and better. And the best founders I know have some free time on their calendar for urgent things that come up. Important things that serendipitously appear, or someone's in town, you have to have dinner, or you have to meet someone who just happens to have time tomorrow at 2 p.m. They make time for that. They're not overbooked to their calendar that they're spread too thin to do last minute interesting things. So good founders manage their schedule and time and their bandwidth much better. It's not an easy job, but I've seen founders excel when they know what their weaknesses are and how to surround themselves with good people and nurture talent.
Surrounding yourself with the right people who can really complement your weaknesses, I think is definitely a key part of it. And, hiring great talent, that's a skill in and of itself, right? If you can't hire great talent, then you better get somebody who can do it. But when one of the things that I found, for example, when I was running Leap, was that I got into situations where things were so dark and they were so hard that on the one hand, I didn't want to tell my investors because I didn't want them to get scared. And I didn't want to tell my co-founder because I didn't want her to freak out. Right. And so in situations like that, where, the founder's like, man, I can't really tell my investors, my wife or partner or husband doesn't get it. I don't know if I want to tell my co-founders because maybe it's going to generate a conflict or they might not understand. That's sometimes where it can be very tough. Right. And so who's the founder lean on there? Like what's been your experience in terms of what mechanisms can founders, or organizations or outside support, what can they lean on, when they need support?
Now, I'll talk about what I have done. Personal board of directors has been very powerful for me. It's a small group of like 8 or 9 people. We meet once a month and we talk about whatever's important to us, top of mind. And it's a group where everybody listens. No one problem solves, essentially. That's not the goal. The goal is to create space to brainstorm and think about scenarios more calmly, more thoughtfully, instead of being caught up in the frenzy of the stress. Having such avenues have been tremendously helpful for me. And I also have specific few people I reach out to for certain types of topics, anything related to limited partners and complicated legal things. I have someone I reach out to, anything related to operations of the firm, the important decisions on investments, whether we make the investment or follow on investment, not make the follow on investment, how much to invest, those kind of things. I have a venture partner who has been tremendously helpful for me. Mm-hmm. Anything related to founders and the founder journey, I have a few founders I reach out to for things that are relevant for them. And I ask them, how did you deal with it? So I can learn how to help my other founder. So learning from other people's experiences, that surrounding myself with those people and these communities like Personal Board of Directors was very, very powerful. I would say it's transformational for me.
Yeah, the Personal Board of Directors, I can relate to, having been in one of those as well. For those listeners out there, it's kind of the equivalent to YPO, right? Young Presidents Organization. And being part of a group like that of people who are non-judgmental, who are not necessarily friends, but, equivalents in from a business context, that has been life-saving for me. I have family members, my father, in my case, has been an incredible mentor. And then the thing that's helped me enormously over the years is coaching, right? So even though I'm a coach, I have a coach, I usually meet with them, every couple of months or every month in some cases. So yeah, having support systems is key. As we dive into the last segment of the show is really around self-reflection and kind of legacy. And so I was wondering, from your point of view, as somebody who has, you've seen the busts, you've seen the booms, you've seen successes, you've seen failures, both personal and in some of the companies that you've worked with. What keeps you learning? I mean, what's the thing that keeps you curious and learning? And also, I think, what's been your most humbling lesson as an investor?
VCs are wrong 100% of the time. It's understandable when they are wrong, when you make an investment, doesn't work out, and they lose money or doesn't return as they expected. But even when they are right, they are wrong. When they expect the company to be so successful, let's say at a 10x or 20x outcome, it actually becomes a 50x or 100x outcome, way bigger than anybody expected. They're wrong again. They thought it would be so big, it would be like even more bigger than what they expected. And that's a humbling experience because I can never be right. Right. Trying to optimize for that is like, it's an ego trip and it doesn't help. But the good thing that I've learned over the past few years, being an emerging manager, that's what the world calls me because I've started a new firm. I'm investing out of the second fund. And my cohort of other emerging managers, there are probably a few hundred of them, is the highest density of the most kindest, smartest, thoughtful people, helpful people I've ever met. These are people who have decided to take a bet on themselves to start a new firm, and their economic outcomes are not short-term. They think long-term. You make an investment and 7 or 8 years later, you begin to see some returns. You're not going to see a penny before that. And now you have to return all the cash to limited partners first before carry kicks in. And they are all working for carry. They're not optimizing for management fees, unlike some other large VC firms. The early stage VCs are the true champions of the industry. And I think it's a huge misunderstanding in the market that the media especially portrays all VCs as sharks, and now you're out to there, they'll take a chunk of pound of flesh out of you, stuff like that. Like, I think it's the narrative's gone too far. And especially good VCs. Like, I'll give you an example. You go to benchmark.com website, is one of the best VC firms. You will see nothing on the website. It's a blank page. You won't even see the names of the partners on the website. There are a lot of VCs like that who lay under the radar, and they don't seek limelight. No, I don't desire to be on the front page of the newspaper. If I have an opportunity, I would shine the light back on my founders and let them get the spotlight. There are so many of those type of VCs in the world, and I think it's underrated how important those people have played a role in every successful startup. Behind the scenes, there was an early believer investor who has probably built a lifelong relationship with that founder.
I love your comment there, because I think that unfortunately, VCs are often vilified by founders, right?
It's cool to do that. But it's not to say that all VCs are great. I'm sure, just like every industry, there are bad founders, there are bad VCs also.
I think it's a vilified industry just because the percentage of investments that are made out of the number of overall pitches is so small, right? It is really, like you said, it's 99-1. And so most founders, unfortunately, are going to fall into that 99% bucket. They're going to get rejected, and they're going to get rejected many, many, many times. And the process is so long. I was, at the VC Latam Summit here in Miami 10 days ago, and they were saying that the average time to get investment now has increased to 18 to 20 months between rounds. That's how long it's taking on average for founders to raise their next round once they start the process, right? So hopefully they start the process in time, they don't run out of runway. But I love what you said about kindness, because I think it's underappreciated, first of all, how important kindness is. I think oftentimes founders don't realize how hard it is to be a good investor, and how frustrating it can be as well. But I was wondering, from your perspective, and I've known you for many, many years now, so I know that you're kind and you're the real deal, right? But why do you decide, because it is a decision at the end of the day, why do you decide to be so kind? And how also have you seen that kindness come back to help you? Not that you would do it because you're doing it to get something out of it, but why do you do it, and how has it helped you as an investor?
You're very kind. Thank you for the kind words. I don't see it as helping people. The question of who am I is a philosophical question that comes up quite often. People think about it. What I think about is, who are we? What is the community I belong to? And what can I do to help build that community around me? Founders is an area that's naturally aligned with what I do now. I've also built a community of VCs that I like collaborating with. And I'll give you an even more obvious example to you, which you would understand. I helped build the alumni community for INSEAD in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah.
And I loved it, and I enjoyed it. It was such a pleasurable experience. The community really came together, and a lot of great things have happened since then. And I've also benefited from all of these things. Like I've received so much love and affection from people, and I continue to receive for work I've done like 10 years ago, and people still remember a lot of good things that happened to them because the community came together. That is what motivates me. And in the end, that also comes back to me because I learn a lot from the community.
Right.
more than half of my investors are from the INSEAD community, my classmates and local alumni and many others. If I had started that way, like I'm going to do this because then I would get that benefit, I don't think it would have worked out well.
Yeah.
I purely focused on building the community, and then eventually a lot of good things came out of it.
You spend time with founders who invariably at some point go through a very tough time, right? We all go through it. I mean, if you make the decision to start a company, you're going to go in for a roller coaster ride, and you're going to have more tough times than good times. What's one piece of advice you'd give them, not so much about business, but about being human as a founder?
Now, I say this in class very often when I teach, and I finished my talk with, be kind to yourself. A lot of people we interact with are super ambitious. We set very high bars for ourselves, stretch goals, and we constantly fall short of a lot of those things, and we are hard on ourselves. We rarely stop to celebrate, and now I'm at fault as well. I've done that many times. I should have probably stopped and celebrated small victories along the way, and I didn't do it as often, but I'm more conscious about it now. And I tell founders the same, like, be kind to yourself. And you want to be kind to other people, you have to be kind to yourself also, and don't miss that.
Yeah.
It's okay to have ambitious goals, but once in a while, take a pause. Okay? Give yourself an hour or a day or a week or a month or sometimes in a year, and reflect and celebrate good things that happen to you. You'll come back with greater energy.
So many of us, not just founders, but I think, in the world of business, and when you go to some of these, MBA programs, like you and I did at INSEAD and other places, when you go to top schools or you go to big companies or you have any kind of degree of success, the pressure to achieve is self-inflicted, right? Very often. One of the diagnostics that I use when I work with founders is called the saboteur assessment. And when you do it, you go through the assessment and it spits out your saboteurs. You have a list of, they're up to 9 of them. And what I have founders really look at is the top 3 on a scale of 1 to 10. And the number of founders that I've worked with who have hyperachiever as a saboteur is mind-boggling, right? And some of these people have it like at an 8, 9, or 10. And so it's interesting that you mentioned that, because self-love really becomes a key component of building resilience, right? Is if you want to go the distance, right? And building a company is a marathon, as we both know, it's not a sprint. You have to show self-love. You have to celebrate, when you have a win, and not immediately jump onto the next thing, right? You have to show compassion to yourself, and not just towards your co-founders and towards others. I mean, the number of founders that I listen to in sessions talk badly to themselves. I mean, they say things to themselves that their worst enemy wouldn't tell them sometimes, right? Either they say it consciously or they say it, in their head, right? And so I think showing self-love is hugely important. The other thing I love that you mentioned as well is gratitude. I actually, curiously enough, I did an Instagram reel on that this morning. I have a gratitude practice every morning when I'm walking, on Miami Beach along the shore. I give gratitude to 5 things that happened to me the previous day. It doesn't matter what it was. I woke up and I have 2 eyes in my head, right? I'm grateful for that, right? I have all my teeth, like I can walk, I can go to the gym, I can go for a run, right? I think when as founders we're able to every single day acknowledge 5 good things that are happening to us, because there's always going to be 5 good things, it always makes it easier to withstand the adversity.
Gratitude and anger, the 2 emotions cannot coexist.
Exactly.
So if you want to dissolve anger, the best way to do that is by being grateful for things.
Yeah.
And automatically you feel far more centered.
That is the key, right? This is what I tell founders as well. In my case, what I tell them is gratitude and fear can't coexist, because I also find that it's hard to be scared when you're grateful for what you have. But regardless, it's this counterweight emotion, which is positive, right? Which I think we both agree founders need to remind themselves of constantly. This has been amazing. This has been awesome. One last question before we wrap up. If you had to write a letter to yourself when you were sitting on the fence, scared of starting shore ventures, or you just had to give yourself one piece of advice to that younger version of Gopi, what would you tell him?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I would tell my younger self to train your mind to be more optimistic. Life is more fun. The world is more fun. And your interactions are a lot more enjoyable. And the day is brighter when there's optimism. And there's actually a lot of optimism. We are right now in the world, despite all the chaos and everything, one of the most peaceful times in thousands of years of history. There's a lot to look forward to. There's so many interesting things happening today in technology and what can happen in the near future. I'm very excited about it. What I would tell my younger self is to develop that skill of optimism, to look forward into the future with more open-mindedness instead of being skeptical.
I think it's a really powerful message to end on. And obviously, Gopi, as an investor, as an entrepreneur in your own right, and for me as an entrepreneur now working with entrepreneurs, optimism is one of those core skills, right? If you want to be a successful entrepreneur, and by any shape or means, regardless of what success means to you, you have to cultivate optimism. That's an absolutely vital trait. And, I love ending with that question because it also reminds us that, growth doesn't come from knowing all the answers, right? It's from daring to ask more and better questions. So your journey, has really reminded us about not just how important it is to build a business, but it is, how important it is to continue to build and develop ourselves through purpose, through reflection, through trust. And also in your case, and I think this is a very important message for our audience today, through kindness. I think the world needs more kindness, and kindness is a strength. And when we are kind to others, it brings a lot of good things back to us and makes the world a slightly better place. So to all those out there, thank you so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. If you have, share it with a friend, like it, talk about it, make sure that you subscribe to Mork Unfiltered. This is all about unfiltered conversations, about getting to the raw truth of founder stories, life stories, and what it is to live a life of meaning and purpose. And until next time, keep asking bold questions and keep leaping forward. Thank you so much. God bless. We'll see you in the next episode. So, what's the real takeaway from this conversation? Well, for me, folks, it was two things. First, when you're clear on your values and your mission, you build resilience. Gopi's conviction didn't just help him launch Shore Ventures. It helped him walk away from misaligned career opportunities and stay anchored and grounded during the hardest parts of his journey. Second, kindness matters. This is no joke. This isn't being soft. It's actually a strategic edge, and leading with trust and generosity builds long-term impact, not just short-term wins. Look, man, if this episode resonated with you, share it with somebody who really needs to hear it. And don't forget, you can download my Mork's Guide to Uncovering Your Values in the show notes. This is Mork Unfiltered. No unicorns, no fairy tales, just raw, unfiltered truth. And I'm looking forward to see you next time. By the way, this show is produced by Pinwheel Productions and me, Patrick Mork. Editing by David Wojcik at Audley, and hosted and distributed by Casted.